We're headed over to NFL.com. We're going to be looking at the next-gen stat charts, and we're going to be looking at 10 wide receivers to pick up off waivers, to drop off waivers, to add in trades, to trade away, and everything else. Really just looking at the trends, seeing what's happening with these players, and see what moves we can make from there. But the move you really need to make is clicking that subscribe button right now. Tap it with your finger on your phone. Click it with your mouse on your computer. We're going to be covering the waiver wire extensively these next few days. You don't want to miss out on that. Then on the end of the week, we want to help you set those lineups, get those trades done, and everything else. Click that button. Stop missing out. Let's look at 10 wide receivers for this week's episode of the Trendy Wide Receivers, brought to you by the Next Gen Stat Charts. Looking at Rashee Rice, he's rostered in a lot of leagues. He's also on waivers in a lot of leagues. This needs fixed because it's starting to be a trend. It was a trend of every other game where we were getting production. This game he got 6 targets. He's hitting around 5 to 6 targets per game. And on the Chiefs, that's a good clip because there are in a lot of money situations with how explosive this offense is. He's got 3 touchdowns on the season. Last week, week 7, scored 17 fantasy points. Back-to-back double-digit PPR fantasy performances. It was in a good matchup here. He's going to be in good matchups throughout the season. He's in the AFC West. Chiefs getting good matchups for fantasy players. Rashee Rice is getting a lot of targets in this offense. He is getting some opportunity, and he's a guy that needs to stop being on waivers. He should be rostered in all leagues at this point, and you should be playing the matchups with him, seeing what happens. Now we're looking at Jackson Smith-Njigba. He was dropped on waivers in a lot of leagues. When we looked at a report from ESPN, he was one of the top guys being dropped there. And then DK Metcalf was out of this matchup, giving him more opportunities. And this was kind of a juicier matchup of the week as well, considering there weren't that many great matchups. We saw him score his first ever career touchdown, saw 7 targets. Looking at the volume here over these last 3 weeks, 7 targets in week 7, 5 in week 6, 6 in week 4, 3 on week 3, 6 in week 2, 5 in week 1. So we're getting some opportunity. The thing about this is the ADOT is usually around 4 yards. So a 4 of ADOT is not good for fantasy. You need more deep balls. But you look at the chart here, you're getting more deep balls when DK Metcalf's out. More opportunities downfield. Really allows him to make plays happen. Really allows him to get more yards on each one of those catches. 4 catches, 63 yards, and a touchdown. Got you some yak. Looked good doing it. And again, he's a rookie. He's got promise. He's on the field. He's doing a little bit of something. Maybe things will ramp up on the end of the year. But right now, when you look at him, he's a guy you play lineups with. He's hard to roster in 12-team leagues. It's hard to depend on him when you got 3 wide receivers in this offense. Don't go chasing fantasy points. If DK Metcalf's out much longer, then you're going to have to look at him for a short bit because he is getting opportunity. But if you're looking for about 5 targets a game, Jackson Smith-Njigba could be a guy to shoot your shot on. Also a DFS candidate in some matchups because he's not going to be priced too high. And he's got some opportunity here, especially if DK Metcalf's still on the mend. But he still scored his first touchdown on his career. Still looked good in his opportunity. Now we're looking at Michael Thomas. And you got to think, hey, what about this for fantasy? What about this for fantasy? But we got jokes here too. Are those all slants? Why are we going to the boundary here? I thought he was slant boy. We don't have all slants. But on a serious matter, he is getting targets. He is getting opportunity. Are you going to trust him week to week? Not really, but 13, 9, 10, 9, 11, 12, 11 fantasy points. So about a wide receiver 3 in production in fantasy. Okay, ho-hum, all right. You're playing the matchups with him. But can we still call him slant boy? Now we're looking at Josh Downs. Get him off waivers now. I've had enough of this. 3 weeks in a row. Gardner Minshew is really going off right now with the rushing production too. Get him off waivers right now. Stop the nonsense. He should not be rostered in like 50% of leagues or whatever it is. Get him off the waiver wire now. He should be rostered. If you've been following this channel and looking for a guy to play the matchups with at wide receiver, here he is. Look at the body of work here. Look at the production. It's going to continue. We're going to have down games, of course, but it's going to continue. Now we're looking at Kendrick Bourne. If you're looking for another wide receiver who gets volume that you want to play matchups with, because it's going to be down a lot of times because it is the Patriots, but you want targets because you need a wide receiver seeing targets. Look at this, 11, 5, 3, 5, 9, 11. You're going to want that. 7 this week. You're going to want that. And you're going to play the matchup, see what happens, close your eyes. That's about it. Mostly for DFS, daily fantasy football, or if you're hurting, we got bye week. He's on waivers in a lot of leagues. Look at Kendrick Bourne if you want targets. Cortland Sutton, I had a lot of questions about him, whether or not to start him or pick somebody up off waivers. Not calling anybody out or anything like that, but when you think of a player like this, think of air yards, think of deep targets. He consistently gets deep targets. You bring one home, you got a splash week. He brought one home, got a splash week. When you're gambling with wide receivers off the waiver wire, you're gambling for the same thing. So a startable option as a splash play is Cortland Sutton. He's going to have down games. He's going to have up games, but 19 this week, 14 last week in fantasy production. 2 the week prior, 11 before that, 19, 11, 13. You just got to play the matchups and pray for the best. He's a deep ball candidate. He can score. He can get you those deep catches. We have multiple touchdowns this year. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 already on the season. I'm scared of the Broncos, but they have a decent schedule for fantasy production for the rest of the season. Now we're looking at Romeo Dubose, and the thing about him is he was heavily dropped last week due to that bye week and the fact that he's been up and down all season, but he's had some good ups. And he had another up game, 11 fantasy points. Then a bye week, a down game, then 2 up games, a down week, and then an up game to start the season. That's what we're getting out of him. You play the matchups with him, you hope for the best, and you see what happens and you roll with it. And he's a wide receiver that the matchups are in right, then you're going to get a splash week. He's a splash week wide receiver, boom bust guy, whatever you want to call it. But that's the trend with him. He should not really be on waivers because I consider him as a top-end boom-bust guy, and you play the matchups with him, and you need a player like that, and he's going to be doing that off and on throughout the year. Now we're looking at Marquez Valdez Scantling, MVS. The thing about him, he's getting a lot of run. He's running a lot of routes, seeing targets each week. Here in the offense, 5 targets, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 2, but he's running a lot of routes each week, getting deeper targets downfield. If you're in a deeper league, if you're playing DFS, we don't just talk redraft here, and we don't just talk 12-team basic leagues. Sometimes we got to think outside the box here to give you something different. He's a guy that you look for that splash play with. We got good size, adjusted athleticism. This team's in shootouts. He's running a lot of routes, getting some opportunities. You always see him on the spreadsheet with those numbers kind of up there, but he's never hitting on the production. And the thing about that, you're going to catch that game. We caught that game. We'll probably catch another one here and there because he's on the field running routes. He's not a pickup in basic redraft. Definitely not. But if you want to throw something into the wind in DFS, DraftKings, FanDuel, cheap wide receiver who's getting looks, who's running routes in a high-powered offense, who's dirt cheap as a lottery ticket, then stack the rest of your lineup in a large entry tournament, might be a guy you want to look at. And again, deeper leagues might be a guy you want to look at too. You want a piece of this Chiefs offense, cheap piece to get. Mike Evans. A lot of you guys let him fall in the draft this year, and he fell quite a bit. He fell past the ADP in a lot of leagues that I was in, and I just watched him fall because I wanted to see how far he would go. And now we're seeing him produce. Looking at this season, 18 points, 29 points, 17, 20, with an 8-point and a 7-pointer on there. 2 bust weeks, really. Good season. He's getting air yards. He's a deep threat. I was expecting more volatile production, honestly, and just more big weeks. But this is solid. This is steady. Baker Mayfield throws deep balls. He's a YOLO quarterback. YOLO wide receivers benefit well with YOLO quarterbacks. That's the trend. If you're looking for a guy to trade for on the cheap, I don't know if you can really get it done with Mike Evans, but try it. Now George Pickens. Had a lot of questions about him. Again, he gets those deep targets. He gets air yards. He gets opportunity. And he's a guy that you scratch your head with every week because of Kenny Pickett, because of the Steelers. But you know what? He ends up getting the job done. Look how consistent he is. 15 this week, 26 the game prior, 5, 11, 22, and 8. Not too bad. you got to start giving him some credit, start giving him some opportunity. And you know what? In some of these matchups, you're just going to have to put him in your lineup, close your eyes, and hope for the best, really, because he is getting targets. He is getting you fantasy production. And George Pickens, whether you believe it or not, he's somewhat consistent. But those are the 10 trendy wide receivers from week 7 that we're looking at. We pulled up the next-gen stat charts from NFL.com, went over those numbers and everything else. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on the way out. Catch you on the next video.